The history of life on Earth is filled with mystery. Life and death struggles, and bizarre plants and animals are amazing as mythological creatures. Studying life's history is one of the most fascinating and challenging parts of biology, and researchers go about it in several ways. The history of life on Earth is filled with mystery, life and death struggles, and bizarre plants and animals. The history of life on Earth is filled with mystery, life and death struggles, and bizarre plants and animals as amazing as any mythological creature. Studying life's history is one of the most fascinating and challenging parts of biology, and researchers go about it in several different ways. Blue food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans searched for food, they learned to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to subject objects, they lose appetite. Blue food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans searched for food, they learned to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to subject objects, they lose appetite.
It is quite clear that rising prosperity does not make people feel more content.
It is quite clear that rising prosperity does not make people clear.
This course will examine some of the profound ethical dilemmas.
This course will examine some of the ethical profound dilemmas.
Fees are heavily discounted and bursaries are available for delegates.
Fees are heavily discounted and advisories are available for delegates.
Students are held accountable for adhering to established community standards.
Students are held responsible for adhering to student responsibilities.
This article covers the who, where and when of the conflict.
This article covers the who, when and where of the particles.
Essays should be typed with double spacing on white paper.
Essays should be typed with double spacing on white paper.
The medical centre is located near the supermarket on North Street.
The medical center is located near the supermarket on the North Street.
The mismatch between the intended and reported uses of the instrument becomes clear.
The mismatch between the intended and reported users of the machine becomes clear.
New York City is famous for its ethnic diversity.
New York City is famous for its ethnic diversity.
A periodical is a publication that is issued regularly.
A periodical is a publication that is issued regularly. This bar graph represents the various sources of funding for higher education in Scotland in millions from 1994 to 2002. Research and Funding Council grants are the major sources of funding for higher education, contributing to more than $700 million. On the other hand, endowments and overseas fees are the least, contributing to less than $10 million. Overall, it can be concluded that Research and Funding Council contribute to the major sources of funding for higher education in Scotland. This bar graph represents the retirements from maintained schools by premature 1988 to 2005. This bar graph represents the various retirements from maintained schools by reasons like premature and age in 1998 to 2006 in England. In 1998, age has been the major reason for the retirement. This age has been equally consistent across over the years and contributes to 50% of retirement in 2006. On the other hand, the premature retirement has increased over the years with a mere less than 2,500 in 1988 to more than 5,000 in 2004. Overall, it can be concluded that it is equal for both in years. Proportion of trips made by This bar graph represents the proportion of trips made by various modes like vehicle, train, and walk in Sydney in 2004. Vehicle accounts for 72% of proportion of trips made by people, and this is followed by walk only, which is contributing to a mere 17%. On the other hand, train, bus, and ferry has 10% and other modes as 2%. Overall, it can be concluded that vehicle is the major proportion of mode where people prefer to travel. This table represents the increase in the number of dwellings over past 10 years in Sydney city region. In 1994, the dwelling stock was around 45,000 and this number has increased to 76,000 in 2004. This has caused an increase in number of over 31,700. On the other hand, the percentage increase is 71%. Overall, it can be concluded that in a mere 10 years gap, the percentage increase in the dwelling stock has been 71%, which is the highest. This bar graph represents the evolution of success rate in Canada from 2000 to 2003. In 2000, the success rate was around 70%. This number gradually increases and reaches a maximum of 87.5 in 2002 and reduces to 59% in 2003, which is the least. On the other hand, the failure rate has been contradictorily opposite to that of success rate and is 40% in 2003. Overall, it can be concluded that the success rate is highest in 2000 and least in 2003. This line graph represents the average class size in UK schools. This line graph represents the average class size in United Kingdom schools from 1994 to 2006, ranging from 19 to 29 in a class. The secondary school size has been 21 in 1994. This number is consistent across the years and reaches an average rate of 22 in 2006. On the other hand, the primary school class size has been 27 in 1994. This number gradually increases and decreases and fluctuates and reaches 26 by 2006. Overall, it can be concluded that primary school is lower than secondary school.
The basis of all life on Earth is the cell. All creatures on Earth are made up of cells. I'm not going to dwell on the biology of cells much. It's not that relevant, but I do want to point out a few things. First of all, there are two sorts of cells. There's a thing called the prokaryotic cell, which is fairly simple, and it's the thing that all bacteria are made of. And then we have a eukaryotic cell, a much more complicated beast on the right, which didn't appear until well into the history of the biosphere on Earth. And there are many single-celled eukaryotes, but there are also, and importantly, multicellular organisms, and all of those are based on the eukaryotic cell.
This lecture is about the various cells. First and foremost, the speaker emphasized the importance of life on the earth is based on the cells. He also highlighted that there are two types of cells, namely prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cells are simple cells which are basically bacteria. On the other hand, the eukaryotic cells are many single-celled organisms called unikaryotic. Many multicell organisms are based on unikaryotic cells. Overall, it can be concluded that this lecture gives a brief information about various types of cells.
Unemployment, lost productivity, and lost contributions to the community are typical and usually uncounted costs of homelessness, and they can be addressed with an integrated strategy. Integrated housing also addresses environmental and sustainability challenges. We incorporate green design principles to create healthier buildings for our residents and staff, limit emissions, and contain energy costs to preserve affordability and reduce the impact of our buildings on the environment. Integrated housing allows a whole community response and the opportunity for mutually beneficial public-private collaborations. Corporate investors match the contributions of government to pay for the acquisition and redevelopment of the Prince George. Corporate investors receive valuable tax credit and other benefits from the federal government and significant marketing benefits for their brand locally. Philanthropy supported the initial program and business planning for the project. Student architects from a local university designed and built an entry-floor art gallery for use by community arts organizations. Historic preservation groups assisted with the fundraising for the ballroom restoration. And the restored ballroom is a rental venue used by many organizations for events, training, fundraisers, and the rental proceeds benefit Common Ground's other supportive housing work, and the jobs created through the caterers are set aside, many of them for our tenants.
The lecture was about how to eradicate homelessness. First and foremost, the speaker highlighted that unemployment is the major cost of homelessness. She also highlighted that the integrated housing can limit the emission and impact analysis. Also, mutually beneficial methods can be employed to reduce homelessness. Namely, the corporate investors are receiving benefits from the government by reducing taxes, which can be used for helping the homeless people. On the other hand, philanthropists and students can help in collecting the college community.
But there's a plant, another dandelion relative, called Achillea, also known as yarrow. And in the Iliad, which is based on events that happened perhaps as much as 2000 BC, Achilles is mentioned as using this herb to heal the wounds of his warriors. So the use of medicinal plants certainly goes back that far. The Romans, of course, used medical herbs, including dandelions. By the time we got to the Middle Ages, dandelions were a well-established medical plant. They were something that was planted in virtually every monastery across Europe. All the many monasteries, the Benedictine monasteries, were havens of knowledge, of the classical knowledge of the ancient Greeks and Romans was kept alive in the monasteries. And monasteries, of course, they were where you would go if you were sick, because the monks were the people who knew the ways to use plants to cure people. So dandelions were a very common plant in monastery gardens. Dens leonis is medieval Latin for tooth of the lion. And of course, you can still buy dandelions off the shelf as a medicine to this day.
The lecture was about the medical benefits of dandelion. First and foremost, the speaker highlighted that this plant was used by Achilles to heal the wounds for the warriors injured during the war in 2000 BC. During the Middle Ages, well-established medical plants have been planted across the monarchies. She also highlighted that Greeks and Romans know how to use it, and they head to monarchies for using it. Overall, it can be concluded that the dandelions can still be found in the medical shelves where it can be used.
How many times a year is a quarterly journal published?
4 times.
A lack of which kind of weather causes drought? Dry weather or rainy weather?
Rainy weather.
Which is usually considered against the law, the use of illicit drugs or the use of prescription medication?
Use of illicit drugs.
When would it be safer to take a medication which causes drowsiness? Before sleeping, driving, or operating machinery?
Before sleeping.
Which instrument is used to measure variations in temperature?
Thermometer.
When you create a table, the data in the horizontal dimension is organized in rows, and the data in the vertical dimension is organized in what?
Columns.
Where is the natural habitat of animals that are classified as aquatic? In the land, in the sea, or in the sky?
In the sea.
Which of the 5 senses are you using if you detect the odor of gas in the laboratory or in your kitchen?
Smell.
How many people are in a quartet?
10 million.
How many legs does a biped have?
2.